We are on to the Eastern Conference. So, as I mentioned in the intro, if you haven't checked out the West, go do that now. Hawks, Atlanta Hawks, buy, sell, or hold.
Not hold. That's I'm gonna skirt the question a little bit with not hold. I think probably and I guess I'll explain why not hold. I think they're starting to look a little friskier. They were one of the most disappointing teams, and I guess they still are if you're thinking about the bottom line for the first half plus of the season. But I think they've won 5 of their last 7. This is again, I don't know what's going on tonight. We're recording this Thursday. I don't think they even play. There's only a couple games. But if anything, if you got to choose between buy or sell and avoid not hold, I think they should buy. Um, I like some of the expirings they have: Lou Williams, Daylon Wright, Gorgie Jang, and Danilo Gallinari is basically an expiring. I guess he's only $5 million guaranteed for next year. So you've got all their own firsts. You can throw stuff together. You can get into the mix for sort of whoever you want. I don't think that should be Ben Simmons, but I like their options. I think if you're looking to do something, you've got to just focus on the defense because the offense is fine. And then as a secondary thing, they still have the Trae Young is off the floor, we can't score problems, which are just like that's been the story forever. So those are the areas I'd focus on if you're looking to buy, which I think you lean that way on the spectrum versus sell. I don't think this is a sell situation.
I'm with 100% of everything you said. The one of the targets I thought a lot about, and I think Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report reported the Hawks actually had conversations about him. We've been banging this drum for months. It's not a victory lap. Just saying, if the Spurs are going to trade Derek White, that's someone who gives you some point of attack defense, and if you want, can displace Trae Young from the ball a little bit when he's in the game, which is something the Hawks have never really leaned into. I'm not sure if he's the guy that can necessarily lead units on his own, but he did a lot of it in years past. Not as much this season of leading bench units for San Antonio. So maybe there is something to try there with it. And they just have so many tradable contracts. Even like Gallinari doesn't suck either. And
No.
so like maybe a team gets him and decides like, yeah, we'll just keep him next year because we can move his 21.5 million full guarantee for something else in a different trade, or he's just going to help us as a secondary scorer. I will say, and I don't know if I wouldn't sell. I would buy. I'm 100% buy on here. There's no equivocating for me. But the noise about them maybe potentially trading John Collins, not as part of a blockbuster, I find that interesting because I think John Collins is really good. His offense is so scalable now. Like, we're not talking about someone who needs to be the primary screener, good 3-point shooter, has a little bit of a floor game. I value so much of what he does, even though his numbers aren't huge. I don't know why, if you're a team that's trying to be good, you would move him independent of making a trade like for Ben Simmons. And it seems like the Hawks are kind of out of those sweepstakes a little bit. So what do you kind of make of that idea? I know they have Clint Capella, and that, look, Collins has gotten better on defense, but you don't necessarily want him to play a ton of 5. You have to have him play 5 when Capella's off the floor. Maybe that makes stuff weird having Onyeka Okongwu there. I found it interesting that Collins appears to be available outside the idea of the Hawks buying aggressively.
So yeah, I find that strange too, and all I can think of is you know it's happened the last 2 years now where there's been a report that Collins is unhappy or frustrated or whatever specific word you want to use with basically how the offense runs, and to me that's like, it seems to me that if the Hawks are willing to do what looks a lot like selling low or moving him for something that isn't like a significant addition, it's just that like maybe the situation is worse than it seems, or certainly there have been signs where it's just, if we got to pick a side between the Collins camp and the Young camp, we're going to pick the Young camp, and Collins just has to go. Um, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't add up to me. I like him too for all the reasons you said. He's very scalable. He proved in the playoffs that he's had an interesting career like trajectory, because he was kind of an energy shot blocker rebounder as a rookie, and then it was suddenly, well, Collins is kind of just like empty points, and he's efficient, but I don't know. And then in the playoffs last year, he was doing everyone couldn't shut up about all the dirty work he was doing and how great this is. So I think if you can make it work with him, you should, because he's not being paid a max salary, and he's not being asked to do max level stuff. But I'm holding on to him. I wanted to throw a couple other ones at you. I love like the idea of Marcus Smart here. I don't think that's been thrown out there or if that's super realistic. I think Robert Covington is someone that you could pretty easily get if you're looking to just kind of have a decent off-ball defensive guy. And Portland would be happy to take. I think throw together Daylon Wright and Gorgie Jang, and you're there. And then Portland gets a bunch of expiring salary too. Maybe you have to sweeten that with a pick, a second rounder or something. That's fine. I just think, or do whatever you need to do, because that's not going to help Portland. That specific package won't get Portland under the tax, but you get the gist of it. What about Goran Dragic as a let's figure out what to do when Trae isn't on the floor thing? Do you think that matters, or is that just not worth it?
It probably matters, but that would be more of a buyout thing to me. I just don't know. He hasn't played this year, essentially for Toronto. I would need to see what he looks like, and just at that price point. So then you're just deciding we're giving up Bogdanovic or Gallo, or is it part of a bigger trade where the Raptors want John Collins on their team? So I wouldn't be in love with that idea. I have found it intriguing how open Collins has been about his unhappiness. He went on the Hawks Report podcast hosted by a friend of the podcast, Sarah K. Spencer, and he was like, he kind of downplayed the initial rumor that he wanted out. He said, I haven't asked for out. I don't want to be traded. I still want to be here. But he actively acknowledged that he wants to be used better, and that he's upset that his usage rate is his lowest since his rookie season. And so he wants to be able to do more, which I totally understand. That's just going to be something to monitor if it's not settled at the deadline, just into beyond, if they don't have this immense playoff success. I do agree that Smart would be interesting there. I don't know how people view his 4-year, $76 million extension based off predominantly what I've seen where people are trying to figure out how to get him to the Jazz. I understand his offense has not been great, but he's a terrific defender, and he does provide some playmaking. And he's actually has, like, prior to this season, had 2 years of quality shooting, some of which included pull-up threes. So I just don't know what you would give up to get him. It's 1 first-round pick in salary? Then yeah, sure, absolutely, try and do that. But it's also tough with this team. You don't know what DeAndre Hunter is either. You've already paid Kevin Huerter too. You moved Cam Reddish, so that's fine. Like, you're not necessarily log jammed when it comes to extensions. But if you do acquire Smart on his next extension and you've paid Huerter, like, what are you doing with Hunter, who just hasn't been healthy enough over the past really his whole career, it feels like, but the past 2 seasons specifically, to gain any sort of momentum? And last year, before he got injured, it looked like he just showed so much progress on the offensive end. That's another wrinkle to this team, where it's like, how do you make any major moves without knowing how one of your 3 or 4 most important players to the long term is actually going to fare for you? I think I would still lean by, and Smart would be interesting. I do think part of this, Schlenk saying that they moved Reddish because he's hoping it would shake up their team. I guess maybe he was right, but Reddish wasn't even playing at the time.
No.
I just
Still
think
not playing.
Right. Which, wow. I mean, if his playing time in New York doesn't increase, but that's a conversation for the actual Knicks. I think they just decided that the first-round pick from Charlotte, it should convey at some point, maybe not this year, that's going to be more valuable for them in a trade than Reddish himself. And if Smart is available, is it even like, Josh Richardson is a name I just keep throwing out. If you're looking for someone who gives you some just, multi-position defense, and he's been hitting threes this year, he's not necessarily going to help your creation. I know he had a rocky 2 seasons in Philly and Dallas respectively, but like, that is a name that I think just helps them a ton when looking at some of their defensive struggles on the perimeter.
Yeah, I agree. I think Josh Richardson he's going to come up a lot for me too today, or on this pod, because it's like, if you're not going to hit on all the bigger suspects that we'll get to a million times, the Grants and the Barnes and the, Eric Gordons and stuff, like, Richardson's kind of, especially, like, if you just want a guy who's going to fill in and give you competent minutes on the wing on both ends, like, he's out there. I don't think, like, the Celtics are married to him, so he's going to come up a lot for me too.